Alright, so welcome back to Everdell. For this video, I'm going to start going over the cards. And it'll probably take several videos to go over all of the cards, but I'm going to explain all of the cards in full detail. Just like I do with Dominion and I did with Terraforming Mars, I'm also going to do it with Everdell as well. So let's get started. So our first two cards are actually my favorites. One of my favorites anyways. I love lizards. So, of course, I'm going to choose the lizard as my favorite. But it's also got some interesting abilities as well. Now, if you were to build the lookout in your town, you could put a worker down on this location, red destination card, to copy any basic or forest location. Now, the reason why that's actually very useful is the basic locations are these, correct? That's the basic locations, correct? And the forest locations are these, which could be even better than these. Now, what this is letting you do is it lets you copy any one of them. So let's say a player had taken up this location here. Only one worker can go here. And so let's say you needed 2 resin, and another player took this location. Well, you could place a worker here on the lookout to copy this location and get 2 resin. And so that's what that means. That's how this card, the lookout, works. And then it's worth 2 victory points at the end of the game, and it costs a twig, a resin, and a pebble to put into your town. But then, once you have the lookout in your town, you may put a wanderer, one wanderer, for free in your town. Just don't forget to put one of these occupied tokens on this card here, showing that you've done it once already with this one here. But you can still play this card even if you don't have the lookout. If you do, you'll have to pay 2 berries. But if you do have the lookout, you get to do it for free. And this is a one-time card. This is a Tan Traveler card. So you're going to get to draw 3 cards one time only. But one really awesome thing that makes the Wanderer so unique and so awesome is you can actually play him in your city and he does not take up a space in your city, which is very significant considering you can only have 15 construction/critters in your town. That means he is not considered in your city, or should I say he's in your city, but he does not take up any space. So technically he's like in a whole nother slot. He's the 16th slot, if anything, because he doesn't take up any space. So that means if you get a couple of wanderers in your town, you could do that. Now that's just something to note. When you have a unique construction, if it says unique, you're only allowed to have that one type of unique construction in your town. So you can't actually have 2 lookouts in your town. You can only have 1 because this is a unique construction. Same thing with unique critters. If you have a unique critter, you can only have 1 of that unique critter in your town. But if you get a common critter or a common construction, you can actually have more than 1. So you could technically have more than 1 wanderer in your town because he is considered a common critter. So that's something cool and something awesome to note. But then that's how these two work together. That's how these two work. Let's move on. Okay, so next we have the school. The school, you have to pay 2 twigs and 2 resin in order to put into your town. And it's one of those purple prosperity cards, the school is. So this one is going to give you 2 points, and it's also going to give you an additional point for each common critter in your city. So if you have a lot of common critters in your city, this is going to give you a lot of extra victory points at the end of the game. And then, if you decide that you have a teacher that you want to play, you can play it for free if you have the school. Just don't forget to do the occupied token in that corner. But then you can play this teacher for free. If you don't play it for free, you'll have to pay 2 berries. And this is one of those grain production cards. So when you play it, you get to draw 2 cards, you get to keep 1, and then you give another to an opponent. Remember, the limit size, hand size is 8. So you can never have any more than 8. If you are given cards and you have more than 8, They just get discarded. So that's something to note. But you'll also get to activate this ability since it is a grain production card. You'll get to activate it in the beginning of spring and the beginning of autumn. So that's how that works. So that's the school and the teacher. Let's move on. Okay, now we have the university and the doctor. Obviously, these two are paired together. So to build the university, you need a resin and 2 pebbles to build it. But the ability is, once you place a worker down, because this is a red destination card, you'll discard a critter or construction from your city and then gain resources equal to that card's cost, but then you'll also gain 1 additional resource of your choice and also gain 1 point. Now, let's go over why this is so important. Let's say you have a critter or a construction, meaning a building in your city you don't want. Maybe at first you thought you wanted it because it had some cool ability, but now the ability isn't very useful for you, and you want something else in your town. Maybe something that gives more victory points or something. You could put a worker here, and then you could discard that critter or construction from your city, then gain the resources equal to that card's cost. So if it was like, for instance, I don't know, the doctor, you would get 4 berries because that's how much you would gain for discarding it. Or any other construction building. Like, let's see here. Let's pick one of these. Like the chapel here, you would get 2 twigs, a resin, and a pebble if that was the one that was discarded from your town, for instance. But then you would also gain 1 additional resource as well, and you also get an extra victory point. And this one is worth 3 victory points. So this is a very powerful card. And then once again, because the fact that you can only have 15 max in your town, this is a very useful card for that reason. So this way you can get something else you want in your town, especially once you start reaching 15. That becomes very powerful. And then this one works with the doctor. So if you've played this, if you've built this into your town, you can play the doctor for free. But if you choose not to play the doctor for free because you don't have, especially if you don't have the university, it's going to cost you 4 berries to play it. But, and don't forget, if you do have the university and you're going to play the doctor, don't forget to add an occupied token to this card. But then this one is in one of those grain production cards again. So when you play it, you may pay up to 3 berries to gain 1 point each. So if you had 3 berries, you could pay the 3 berries by, paying them back to where you got the berries, which would be here. And then you would gain 1 point token for each of them. So if it was 3, you would just get one of these 3s. If it was, but it says you may pay up to 3. So you could pay up to 2 if you wanted, or you could pay just 1, or you could pay nothing. But if you pay nothing, you don't get any points either. So that's something to note. But it is worth 4 victory points at the end of the game for having a doctor in your town. So even just having the doctor in your town is very lucrative, of course. So that's awesome. All right, so let's move on to the next 2. Okay, well, this is the Ruins. This is a Tan Traveler card. It's worth 0 points. But you'll notice at the top card of the card, there are no resources, meaning you can play this card for free in your town. But in order to play it in your town, you need to have at least 1 building in your town, because you're going to need to discard a destruction card from your city. So if you put this in your town, you do not have a construction card in your city, which you could play in your city, you're not getting anything for this card. You're just essentially taking up a slot in your town, which is already, has a limit, and you're getting nothing for it. So you should have a building you do not want. So this is a card that's going to get rid of a building that you do not want. So anyways, discard a construction from your city. Gain resources equal to that construction's cost, and then draw 2 cards. So that's really cool. So this is like similar to that other card we showed you, which is beneath it, obviously. It's similar to this, except this one allows you to do either a critter or a construction. But then you also get an extra point and you get an additional resource with this one. With this one, you don't get those 2 additional things, but you do get 2 cards. But you do still gain all of the resources equal to the construction's cost of the card that you destroyed, basically in a sense, and replaced it with this. So that's something to note. And that's a pretty useful card if you need a certain amount of resources or something like that. But then, if you have the Peddler, you can play the Peddler for free if you have a Ruins in your town. If you don't play a Peddler for free, you're going to pay, if you don't have a Ruins, you're going to have to pay 2 berries in order to play the Peddler. So how does the Peddler work? Well, it's a green production card again. So when you play it, and during 2 of the seasons, you may pay up to 2 resources to gain an equal amount of resources. So you could do like 2 twigs and then get 2 harder to get resources in exchange for 2 twigs. Like a pebble and a berry, for instance. Or a resin and a pebble, for instance. So that's how that works. Alright, and then obviously it's worth a point at the end of the game. So that's the Ruins and the Peddler. Let's see, how about we do another set of cards before we end this particular video. Okay, well, first we have the Chapel. 2 twigs, a resin, and a pebble to build and put this card in your town. And this is a red destination card that's worth 2 victory points. When you place a worker here on this red destination, you're going to place 1 point token on this chapel, and then you're going to draw 2 cards for each point token on this chapel. So the first time you do this, there's only going to be 1 point token, so you're going to draw 2 cards. But the second time this is done, another point token will be added, and then you're going to draw 4 cards. And so that's how that's going to work with the chapel. I actually haven't gotten to play the chapel yet. It just never seems to show up. So it always seems to be at the bottom of the deck. Or towards the bottom anyways. But then, if you have the chapel in your town, you can play the shepherd for free. If you don't have the chapel, then you're going to have to pay 3 berries to an opponent to play the shepherd. So normally, when you pay resources, you just return them back to where you got them. But this one says that you will pay 3 berries to an opponent. So if you're going to put the shepherd in your town and you're not going to do it for free, you're giving 3 berries to your opponent. So that's something to remember and note. But then this one is also worth 1 point, and it's a Tan Traveler card, so it's a one-time thing. You'll gain 3 berries, and then you'll gain 1 point for each point that's on your chapel. So if you get this later in the game, and somebody's been putting a lot of workers throughout the seasons on the chapel, you'll get 3 berries, but then you'll gain a whole bunch of points because there'll be a whole bunch of points sitting on your chapel. So that's something to note. So it's true, you'll be paying 3 berries to play him, but you'll be getting them back when you play him. So that's something to note. Unless you play him for free because you have the chapel, then you don't have to pay anything, and you get 3 berries to boot. And you might even get some points. So these 2 together are awesome. That's a really nice combo. So playing these cards in pairs, you can see trying to play them in pairs is a whole lot more powerful than just trying to play one or the other, for sure. Okay, we'll continue on in the next video.